God redirected my path. This longing for my grandmother and this newfound passion for juice and health and well-being became a business. I put everything I had into this 700 square foot space, and by the grace of God, it was blessed. Man, the people I love, they don't believe in this. When the name Ruby Jeans came to me, it was almost like nothing else could stop me. Nothing else
Welcome to the Millionaire Playbook, where we break down how to actually build wealth, take control of your life, and create opportunities on your own terms. Today's episode is a special one for me, not just because who I'm sitting down with, but because of where we're filming. So I have to give a shout out to Operation Breakthrough. We're here today at Operation Breakthrough's Ignition Lab podcast studio in Kansas City, an organization that provides early education, care, and support for children and families in underserved communities. It's a place that helps create stability, opportunity, and a real foundation for future success. And what makes this even more meaningful is that both myself and today's guests actually were once a part of Operation Breakthrough as children growing up. And so this organization means so much to me. And for me, this conversation is bigger than just money. I know, this is the Millionaire Playbook. We're all about money. We're all about building and preserving wealth. But it's this it's about mindset, environment, opportunity, and what it really takes to build something from where you started. And so today, with that being said, I'm joined by Chris Goode, someone who has built success in his own right and is now in a position to give back and make an impact in the very community that helped shape him. Thank you so much for joining us,
Thank
Chris.
you for having me, Maisha.
Yes. And so, just jumping right into it, you've built like a very prominent brand in Kansas City. So I would love for you to just talk about that journey to building Ruby Jean.
Yeah, so ironically, it does really start here, not necessarily in this building, but across the street. Back in the day, it was called St. Vincent's.
Yep.
And I had the privilege of attending my siblings, my cousins. And so this corridor right here, the bus stop that we've now adopted, that was our bus stop. The building down the street where our business is in, that was the day old bread store. And so, this is an opportunity to come back home. But the reason Ruby Jean started was Ruby Jean herself, my late grandmother. So she died at 61 from type 2 diabetes. And the way that she passed, when my great grandmother found out that her baby was, going to leave us, we sent for her from Muskogee, Oklahoma. And Mom, as we called her, came say goodbye to my grandma, to her baby, Ruby Jean. And after doing so, she went in, spent that final hour with her, came out to the waiting room over at St. Luke's on the plaza, looked around at the family, took this big gasp for air, and ended up having a massive heart attack. And so, my family, we lost two of the most important people in 48 hours. And so as a 14-year-old kid experiencing that level of grief, it made me deeply introverted. It made me, feel things very, very deeply. But it also, I remember kind of putting a mental note in my mind and said, I'm going to tell people about my grandma one day. And I thought that I would make it to the NFL and build some statue for her. But that didn't happen. And lo and behold, God redirected my path. A couple of friends of mine introduced me to cold pressed juice. You've lived in Los Angeles. And so I get to LA and I'm just coming to visit. And when I get there, they're like, "Oh man, good to see you. How was the flight? Yada, yada, yada." And then they're like, "Oh, we forgot to tell you, we're not going to eat today or tomorrow."
Okay.
And I'm like, what you mean? I go, "Hey, what are we talking about?" And so they explain that they're finishing up this 7-day juice cleanse. And they tried to explain it. It went way over my head. I ate a lot that day. The next day they set me down and was like, we know you think we're crazy. And I was like, I do. And so they were like, all right, let me explain this to you. This is what we want to show you what we're doing. And so they set me down in front of this documentary called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And at the beginning of it, I'm annoyed that I'm watching a documentary in LA. I'm like, all right, let's go to the beach. So I had
Right, let's
enough.
go.
Midway through, I start paying attention, and by the end, my mind was blown because this guy, Joe Cross, a well-to-do guy, he was struggling with his health, taking all this different prescription medicine. And he was like, I got the best doctors, the best access to healthcare, and none of it's fixing me. And so he did his research and he landed on juice cleansing. And so he decided to drink juice for 60 days straight. No chewing, no coffee, no, just straight juice. And it showed his progress where it was hard, but he got through. And by the end of this documentary, my mind is blown because I'm looking at a different human. And this is not something that was overly edited. And I'm like, oh my God, my grandma, he figured out how to change his trajectory in 60 days. And my grandmother lived 61 years and never ran into somebody, never realized that type 2 diabetes, it's what are you eating? Are you moving your body? Are you not moving your body? She literally ate soul food until it killed her. And so it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, man, I got to try this. And so I get home to Kansas City and I set out on a 10-day juice cleanse.
Okay.
By day 3, I was like, nah, this ain't for me. It was tough. It was like really, really hard.
Hard, yeah.
But I got through it.
Yeah.
And so I get to day 10 and I had this awareness, this clarity, this vibrancy in my being that I had never experienced, even being a collegiate athlete. And so I was hooked and I'm traveling for work. I started going to juice bars from coast to coast just as a consumer here in Kansas City when I would come home. And I started getting menus, taking pictures, kind of judging my family like, mama, maybe we should stop eating fried chicken. Like, sis, maybe we should put down a Dr. Pepper, getting on their nerves.
I'm sure.
All the time, like, oh, here come Chris. Let me hide,
Judging me.
put my hot chips away. And so, I fell in love with it though. And where this longing for my grandmother and this newfound passion for juice and health and well-being became a business is I got tired of traveling. I was in 3 different cities in 3 weeks and I woke up in Schaumburg, Illinois, and I couldn't remember where I was at. And so I started to jog my mind like, okay, Chicago. And then, I realized that was like a breaking point. So coming from Wabash to making over 6 figures, it was like, man, my first mind was like, what else do you need? Like, you can't be tired of this, like people wish they could be doing this. But my second mind was like, yeah, but like, what is it? Like, what do you really want? And so I started to think about what I was passionate about. And of course, my grandma comes right to mind. I'm looking at my tattoos. I got her porch 3907 Wabash tatted on my arm. I'm like, man, I miss my grandma. And the second was like, what else? Health. I really like health. I like how I feel when I'm healthy, like helping people lose weight or whatever it is. I love juice. So I'm like, health, juice, grandma. Wait a minute. God is like, duh.
How do you bring it together?
This start a juice bar and honor your grandmother. And, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I started thinking about the places I had been. Like, oh, in Philly, I had this pineapple and carrot juice. In Chicago, I had this smoothie. And it just started to flow out of me. And over the next 2 years from that point, I will make every mistake that you could make in going to start a business. I quit my job too soon. But July 25th of 2015, which will be 11 years this coming summer, I put everything I had into this 700 square foot space. And by the grace of God, it was blessed. We quickly rose to be one of the more popular small businesses in Kansas City. Yelp named us one of the top 100 businesses on their entire platform.
Wow.
We got approached to do a licensee location in another city, and it just started to unfold. Kansas City really wrapped its arms around us as a business and supported it heavily. And for the last 11 years, I've been on that roller coaster.
Okay. So I want to go back a little bit because you touched on something that was very important for me, and it sounded like you were making great money, right? You were at a 6-figure job, but then you just said you just weren't really feeling fulfilled.
Correct.
So then you reached this point where now it's time to pivot. Let's talk about the power of the pivot because, a lot of my subscribers know that I have a background actually in film. like writing and producing film. And it was the writer strike that happened in 2023 that kind of led me on that pivot. And just navigating the power of the pivot, it ebbs and flows. Like sometimes, I don't know about you, and I would love to hear more about like what that experience was like in detail, like the nuance details, because the pivot is not always easy.
Yeah.
Right. And so there were a lot of things that I personally had to grieve, just what I thought my life, what I was envisioning for my life. And like, I never saw myself doing anything outside of, media and film. And now all of a sudden, here I am just like knee deep into real estate investing.
Yeah.
Right. And building this empire and just walking like in this new path as my own boss and like taking control of my destiny. So I would love to talk about that journey a little bit more, that pivot, right? So you're saying, okay, being in this hotel in Illinois, not really even knowing where you were at one point, all of a sudden you're like, okay, you're not feeling fulfilled, right? So you did it smart. You really thought about all the elements, all the different things that you were passionate about. So talk to me about that journey, because I feel like that's what we're here to learn about. It's like entrepreneurship is not easy.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you had a lot of failures, as when you're a new entrepreneur, that's natural, especially if somebody's not giving you all the keys to that.
Zero.
Right? It's zero. Exactly.
None of the
sometimes
keys,
you just fail forward.
Yeah.
So what was like the nuance process of that? So you had this idea, you wanted to connect all three of the things that you were passionate about. How did you get started?
Yeah, so first I started to tell my friends, and the first name, like I tend to work backwards. Like if I can see something, then I can go fill in the spaces. And so in trying to come up with a name, like the passion that I had for the longing of my grandmother, it didn't connect right away, all the way. And so my first name was gonna be Smooth and Juicy.
Wow. Okay.
And so I told my best friend Shannon this, and I tell her, like, this is what I want to do. I'm gonna quit my job and start a juice bar. Okay, Chris, what are you gonna name it? Smooth and Juicy. And she busted out laughing. And I was like, oh, I was serious. Yeah, I was serious. And I would tell people, and rejection, doubt, worry, laughter. And it kind of discouraged me a little bit. But I finally went and I said, God, I know you gave me this. I remember the distinct moment where I shot up in that hotel room and I'm pacing the room. And so I know when God puts something on my heart to not let go of it, no matter what people say. And that was the hardest first hurdle to really push through in real time, was that, man, the people I love, they don't believe in this, but I had to silence that. So that was a big step. Then in sitting back, getting knocked down and thinking about like, why are you passionate about this? And then it's like, oh, my grandma, duh, Ruby Jeans. And when I got Ruby Jeans, it was like, stillness is very powerful for me. And so, it's a lot of distractions that happen in our world. And even at that time, social media, I wouldn't say is where it is as distracting as it is today. But I need silence to really be able to hear from God. And that's when I get my downloads. And so I got quiet, and I was discouraged, and I was like, well, God, what do I, and when the name Ruby Jeans came to me, it was almost like nothing else could stop me. Nothing else would stop me. Quitting my job that was a big step, because I'm making really good money. I'm enjoying and building up all these points from traveling all over the country. I'm used to that lifestyle.
Did you have kids at that time?
I had no kids, no wife. I was just, young man, but I was doing well for myself. And so quitting the job, that was like a really big leap of faith, but I ended up quitting too soon. And so I started to look for spaces, and, I got a lot of no's. Like, nope, you don't have experience. Nope, you don't have enough money. We won't even call you back. No, 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 no. And so more discouragement, money's running out. It's like, okay, got to go get a job. And so I went and got another job, a non-traveling job, just to be able to, keep money coming towards me instead of just spending it. And so after I got the second job, I'm still looking for a space. I ended up meeting a lady out and about, and she had kind of heard that there was this guy that wanted to start a juice bar, and we would end up just meeting out and about. And she had a gym inside of a basement, small boutique gym. And we would start talking, and she's like, well, I have this gym, there's this space upstairs, and maybe you should come see it. And so the very next day on a Sunday, I go and check out this space, and it's about 750 square feet. It's nothing big, but it had really good lighting.
Mhm.
The ceilings were vaulted, and I saw it. As soon as I saw the space, I'm like, oh my God, this is it. And so I went all in. I went all in. We put together a terrible, when I say terrible, a terrible lease. I got
Okay.
this like off of LegalZoom,
Okay.
changed the wording, shook her hand, signed it, and we up the road. And so it was a lot of sweat equity, painting, putting down flooring, doing everything I could, buying used equipment. And after, I say it took about 7 months to get the space together, and I wasn't like doing it through the city or anything. I'm just covering up the windows when we going to work. But July 25th of 2015, we got open, and everything is handmade. You got signs that I'm like, hey, y'all print stickers, right?
Right.
And then, hey, y'all make metal, right? Can you
Yeah.
make a case for it? Like just putting every single piece together. And so I think the biggest steps though that I would say could relate to someone else is the stepping over doubt. And that's self-doubt first, and then the doubt of others. Stepping into your purpose while being able to silence what's around you and staying laser focused on if you really feel called to this thing. For in my world, passion is very important. Purpose is very important. I don't want to be wealthy just because, I had the best plumbing for whatever, something I don't care about. I I want wealth to come, freedom to come by way of me delivering freedom and passion and purpose to other people. And I want to feel that every single day. And
Mhm.
so that was a big one for me, being able to land on something that I actually care about that's meaningful. But yeah, I'll
Okay.
stop there.
So that's awesome. So okay, so you had this, your first storefront
Hmm.
in this gym. So then how did you pivot to like the storefront that you now have on Truth? Because I was there the other day
Hmm.
and it is beautiful.
Thank
Like
you.
it is a beautiful building. Like it is so well put together. The branding, the artistry, like the decoration, like the interior design of it all, it's amazing.
Thank you.
So like what how did you transition from this storefront in this gym where you put all sweat equity and you did handwritten signs and things of that nature to now this beautiful building?
Yeah, so the very first location was at 40th and Broadway, and then we got approached by a grocery store in Springfield, Missouri, where they wanted to license our concept. And so then we did that deal, and that became the second. Well, then a broker came into that very first location, and in hindsight, I recognized that growth, when positioned for a young entrepreneur, it can be used as a persuasive tool for someone else to make money, right?
Mhm.
Like I see your brand and I think you have something, but I'm going to sell it to you in a way where it encourages you to go ahead and open another location,
Mm.
even if you're not ready. And so that's something that I fell into. And I won't say that it was a trap. I think it, like you said earlier, it gave me the opportunity to fail forward.
Mhm.
And so we started to grow really, really too soon.
So you feel like you weren't ready. So when you got approached for that distribution deal,
Not
or
the
the
distribution
distribution
deal.
deal,
The licensing
the
deal
licensing
was
deal.
fine because
Okay.
it didn't add any weight, or it didn't reduce my capacity. Yes, I had to go down and train their team a few times. But this is a business that already was running 25, 30 Starbucks. And so them, getting our system and being able to implement it, them spending the money to build out the space, spending money with us to actually license a brand, that was smart growth. Now, the next one, we opened at 11th and Main, right on the streetcar line. I think it's a really good location. The business did well. The pandemic ended up being the demise of it because once the office workers left from above it, it just didn't make sense anymore.
Mhm.
But then in the midst of all that, this conversation about 30th and what I call truth came about. And so I get approached, and I'm starting to slow down in the growth. Like, cause people are like, oh, you should do this, do this, do this. And I'm I'm excited by it. But when I heard 30th and Truth, I questioned it because again, this is home, and I know how hard it is in the other spaces that are more affluent. And so I'm thinking, man, Juice on Truth, like, I don't know. I don't know. And so my first mind was that, but then my second mind, I kept praying on it, kept praying on it. And again, I felt bad that I even questioned it because this is home. And then I started to think about like, man, if you don't do this, like it might not ever happen. Like this type of offering here. And so I leaned into it. I found what was a good deal. The owner of the building at that time found us and said, "Hey, we'll do this build out. We'll invest in this real estate, but only if you run your business here."
How did they find you?
Through that broker. The broker that walked into, our first location is that, and I think it was smart on her part, as a broker, but also it forced us into, being able to see what was possible with the brand. And so I leaned into that deal and this became our cornerstone because we would end up losing the downtown location due to the pandemic. Our first location, that legal Zoom lease that it will come back to bite me. And what was a very successful location we would end up losing that space too, just because of a bad understanding in the agreement. They were trying to raise the prices, yada, yada, yada. And so we got displaced from our first location. And then now 30th and Truth becomes the cornerstone. But it's like God was pointing us here the whole time. That was just really, warming us up for really what was where we were supposed to call home. And lo and behold, it's right across the street from where I went to preschool.
Yeah, Operation Preschool.
It's in the day old bread store. It's up the street from our bus stop. It's a couple blocks over from where my grandmother worked. And so it became very important to our brand.
Yes.
Did I answer your question?
You did, very community forward. And just because like this show is all about building wealth, and I'm sure there are entrepreneurs who are wanting to start their own businesses, I would love for you to talk a little bit about that licensing. When you got somebody that approached you with a licensing deal, what did that look like? And also it's like, did you have to give up any equity? Do you feel like, I think you mentioned that it was a good deal for you and it helped really move the business forward. But I would love for you to like just touch on that.
Yep. So there's some distinct differences between a franchise and a licensee. And so the licensee gave us the legal framework to be able to do this venture collaboratively with this outfit without going through having a franchise in place, a franchise structure in place, which is very, very costly. And so essentially we were lending our brand to this entity for a set duration for a set amount of money. And it allowed us to expand without going through, like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of legal paperwork to create a franchise structure. But it was ability to leverage the brand more broadly, for our brand. Because now when you can see a small brand and say, oh, we've expanded to an entirely different city. Yes, it's in Missouri, but still at this juncture of our business, it creates trust for new deals. And I would be careful with it. There's things I've learned about the whole process that, I didn't know. And I had never done it. When they first approached, when the ladies came in our store, and this has happened to us several times now, people will start asking questions about the business when they're there, that it's like, you don't just want a smoothie, do you?
Right. Yeah.
You got your juice and everything, but you're asking them a lot of questions, like what's going on? And lo and behold, it was two dietitians that were secret shopping our store for this grocery store entity that had gotten wind of our business. And it ended up being a great deal. We still have that location down in Springfield. And it's a really good relationship.
So is it safe to say that you would recommend, up and coming business looking for
as early as I did? No.
No.
I think, because one of the corners we have to cut being underfunded is that we don't have an attorney on retainer at that time. And so I'm going through this contract. I'm making sure that this is in our best interest. Yes, I'm going to have somebody review it, but I'm going to say like, hey, I just need you to tell me this. So I'm not racking up big legal fees. But without the appropriate legal counsel, I would I would express extreme caution when doing any type of a deal like this. But I've had to take risk along this way that um in my gut I knew were good risks. And sometimes I've been wrong. But this licensee deal, I think it's something to consider, but I would express extreme caution, especially doing it how I did, doing most of the review yourself.
Mhm.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
But be advised that you're gonna have to take a risk somewhere.
Somewhere.
If it's in legal, I would say,
Yeah, no, I always I invest in legal, and
yeah.
I see what you mean, and I agree with that because, sometimes it is in the paperwork. But would
Mhm.
you say that that is something like a potential opportunity for those that are underfunded who have a brand that they want to move forward to explore?
Yes, but it's not really, it's not enough money to move from being underfunded to well funded. You know what I mean? It's something to keep the process going, but it's money that's likely gonna just be reinvested. At least it was for us.
Okay. So I want to get more like back into the community piece of it,
Mhm.
right? So you buy this building now in Truce. It spoke to you. It was
We were tenants when we first came, so
right.
we were renting the building.
Okay, so the broker brings it to you. It feels God ordained. You're in the community. You roll the dice and you
Yeah,
take the risk
yeah.
and you identify that something like that is very much so needed in the
Mhm.
community. So you put all this value into it, and then fast forward, we hear a breaking story on the news about how your property taxes, now that you own it, skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. What's kind of going through your mind when you get hit with that property tax bill, and what was kind of going through your mind at that time?
Yeah, I'll try to I'll try to not get emotional because, Maisha, the fact of the matter is like what goes through my mind is like, dang, we, man, come from Wabash, St. Vincent's, Dale Press Store, move out south, running from home, really trying to get better school or whatever it is, graduate from Ruskin High School, um, carry the grief of your grandmother's into college, walk onto the college football team, earn a spot, earn a scholarship your junior year, come home, scrap, hustle, find this job, find that job, get to the point of becoming a catastrophe adjuster, get over six figures, start making really good moves, purchase your first property, able to help your family, you start serving community as soon as you get out of college. I mean, from the day your feet touch the ground, I jumped into Janice Ellis's mayoral campaign as soon as I got home, and I've never stopped serving Kansas City in some capacity.
Mhm.
For half of my life, I've been serving, and you know, to get to the point to even being able to say like, man, we bought the Day Old Bread Store.
That's big.
And it's the first 100% health focused food business ever on the east side of Kansas City in the history of Kansas City, Missouri. And
Mhm.
so to come over all these hurdles and hurdles I can't even talk about here,
Mhm.
to come from being a tenant of this real estate and not always treated the greatest, to signing on closing day for this property. And first year the taxes come out and it's like, okay, it's $3,300. Even paying that, just learning how property taxes work is like, dang, what? I've been paying taxes all year. Y'all didn't get this one already?
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's a different one. And so, okay, send that in. Gulp. Well, then the next year,
What is kind of like your vision moving forward into your campaign for city council?
yeah, my overarching goal is to improve our longevity. When I think about all the different policy that, you know, could be spoken about, whether it's infrastructure, transportation, schools, housing, food access, and on and on and on. I've really distilled it down to one overarching goal as being a father. it's really helped me put life into perspective. The time that I have with my wife, with my boys, that's what's most important. The reason my business exists, the reason I've been able to have a platform to even speak from is really due to a shortened longevity in my grandmother. And the conditions that existed for her, they didn't lend itself to a long life. And so whether any political platform is spoken of, at the end of the day, nothing in my mind is more important than our longevity and the quality thereof. We want to live a long time. We want to spend time with our families. We want to have time to serve our community. But if, because of where we live, statistically speaking, we're going to shorten that life expectancy, then that's what I'm working for. I'm working to make sure that these zip codes on the east side are valued in such a way where that life expectancy gap is shortened, that we're not celebrating the development of a beautiful new real estate development with zero attention given to our life expectancy and our health outcomes, that we're not carrying on this tone of celebration for an international event coming to Kansas City with zero consideration given to our life expectancy or our health outcomes, that we're not just merely celebrating fiscal progress for some while people are dying. And so running for city council, third district at large here in Kansas City, it's a culmination of my life, of me saying, I never in my mind was like, oh, I'm going to do this so I can then run for council. I've just done the work. And now I've realized in doing the work, we still fall short. In doing it with earnest, we still fall short. In building beautiful assets, we still fall short. In giving and agitating and speaking and putting people together, raising the voice of the people, we still fall short. And so my desire is to win this seat, but then give it back to people, not me just sit there and say, hey, we have a seat. You have a access to this conversation, and this is how your outcomes can be impacted, but you have to show up, and there's responsibility still on your side because your voice, your engagement, your attention is required in order for this to not be my seat, but to be our seat.
Okay. And are there like specific initiatives that you are kind of, thinking about implementing when it comes to extending the life expectancy on the east side and, in Kansas City? And I want you to, because I think you were giving me some statistic that it kind of like led you on this path with wanting to increase the lifespan of individuals on the east side of truth. And how does that even tie into each other? Like, what is impacting that?
Yeah, so the work that I've done, access to well-being, access to healthier food, our garden at 29th and Wabash, cleanliness is extremely important. The desire for the Paseo Stairs to be a health and wellness site where people can use and move their bodies. But what I'm doing right now at this stage in my campaign is listening. And so the work that I've done for the last 20 years, it it shows itself to what would impact, our life expectancy. But from a campaign perspective, I'm listening. I'm saying, hey, I have the outline, the frame of it is longevity, shared responsibility is the approach, safety and belonging, wellness and quality of life, transparent and engaged governance, considerate economic development. So I have all these bubbles and I have longevity as a focus, but then I'm listening to people. We've just had 2 listening sessions over the last 2 months, and we're holding different meetings with different stakeholders in different sectors to say, hey, what is it that you want? Because we have the frame and longevity is this focus. What is it that you want? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so my work in and of itself is longevity work. And so access to food is extremely important. And so really, really supporting the urban agriculture is going to be really, really high on my list. Cleanliness, you can't even approach a healthier lifestyle if you're just surrounded by filth everywhere you turn. And so just the work that I'm doing in community today lends itself that way, but now we're asking people to help us fill in the bubbles. And there's some really, really cool initiatives that, we got a year before my campaign that I'll just let flow out at the right time in order to make sure that they remain proprietary and unique to our campaign.
Okay. And what is the future of Ruby Jeans look like? You've now received distribution.
hmm
Okay. Can we expect more storefronts? Are we looking at additional distribution deals? More
we
community
gotta
impact?
we gotta let the good Lord kind of just do his work. Distribution is obviously our pretty high focus, making sure that we have a broader reach. We've got some international partners that we'll be hosting here in Kansas City from Jamaica and the Dominican Republic. And then we're close to cracking into Canada. And so really expanding the breadth of our business is important, but really the why and the what we are doing about it is important to me, because there's a lot of businesses that are heavily steeped in, we do this because of ABC, but now we've been focused on, well, what do we do about that? And so for the last 3 years, we've been removing blight and growing food. Before I come here, I'm looking at cherry bushes and blueberry bushes that we can plant this weekend with Girl Scouts, amongst a multitude of projects. And so I want to really grow the impact at the same time as we grow the reach of the business while fighting for our real estate, and maintaining the cornerstone, the home plate, and being able to fight for what's rightfully ours.
Okay, that's awesome. And so, for those of our viewers that are interested in pursuing entrepreneurship, maybe they want to, start a restaurant business or a brand themselves. What would be your advice to them?
Um, I think that, really, really start from a place of passion and purpose. Start from something that, it's too hard to persist when you don't really care deeply in your heart, because, you it's so many exit ramps that you can take. It's so many nights where you can say, I've had enough of this. But being tethered to values, to something that really is meaningful, that's really important, is very, very, very critical.
Okay. All right. And so our signature question on the show that we like to ask, because it is the Millionaire Playbook at the end of the day. What is your version of a Millionaire Playbook?
Millionaire Playbook, in my mind, I would say is passion. Just as my last answer is having a root, because if you look down at the root ball, right, and we've been gardening, so this is heavily on my mind. But if you look down at the root ball, and theoretically all you see is this idea of money, it's going to be fleeting, because you may grow this money tree, but it's hard to find contentment and value in a world that um it really glamorizes money. It glamorizes materialism. And so if money is down there, it's a bad playbook. But if there's, yes, I want to have resource to create access. I want to have resource to create freedom. I want to have resource to create legacy. I want to have resource to pour back into OB. I want to have resources to ensure that my family gets to experience, the ability to learn, the ability to travel, the ability to experience. Cool, but it has to be some purpose in that root ball. It can't just be money and resource in that root ball. And so my soul playbook is make sure that the roots of it have purpose and real values and real intentions attached to it, even though we know we need resources, we need money. But if that's all that's in there, it's a really, really very shallow playbook.
So finding something that you're truly passionate about.
Absolutely.
I got it. Okay. Well, guys, there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for joining us today, Chris. This was a great conversation. This is the Millionaire Playbook, where we break down how to actually build wealth, take control of your life, and create opportunities on your own terms. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you guys next Monday.